Wow, that was a bad last 6 months for immigrants here in Canada. As we can see, the government completely changed its position on immigration. Gone are the sunnier ways and sunnier days that we saw at the beginning, and in comes a cloud of Trumpian immigration policies. So let's talk about some of the groups that were affected. Let's start with students. What were the big announcements that got made that really affected students negatively?
So the government really put students in the spotlight in their policies. They wanted to reduce the number of students dramatically, and some of the policies that they implemented really took away incentives for students to come and study in Canada. One of the biggest ones was students who had partners. Their partners, unless they were doing a master's program, were not able to get the work permits for the spouses. So that prevented a lot of spouses and families to be able to support themselves in Canada when the principal applicant isn't able to work full-time and are paying those exorbitant international student fees.
To me, yeah, that was an especially cruel one, I thought, to tell a
Yes.
student that they can come. And it was almost discriminatory towards ones that have families, because the reality is it takes 4 years to get a degree, and you're
Yes.
basically asking people, if you want to come to Canada, you got to be apart from your family for 4 years. I
Yes.
thought that especially also affected women in a very negative way.
Absolutely. And the other program as well that really decimated a lot of colleges especially was that other than a few programs that were what the government thought were important programs for colleges, the non-degree programs, the people who are graduating from them are no longer able to get the post-grad work permit. The post-grad work permit is one of the main items of the incentives as to why the students wanted to study in Canada. We have been really winning the race with regard to education and attracting students to come to Canada because of the fact that before the students were able to get 3-year open work permits and a pathway towards permanent residence. So now that the postgrad work permits are being taken away from most of the non-degree programs, the colleges are being decimated.
Of course, the whole reason that these students wanted to come was a pathway to permanent residency. By taking these away, they've destroyed that, and these colleges are really the ones suffering because their numbers of students that are wanting to come have decreased significantly.
Now, the government is attacking colleges, for example, and saying things like, oh, they were tricking students. I think that is completely unfair. There were many bad agents and consultants overseas who were tricking students into coming to Canada, but that is the responsibility of the government to actually investigate these situations and not allow this to happen. And now they are using a hammer to go after this program that has really brought a lot of economic benefits, including the fact that we were having many well-trained, young, professional people who were educated in Canada and have really brought a lot of advantages to our Canadian workforce. And so now, even the workers are also being targeted.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because the students had it bad, but the workers had it real bad too in the last 6 months. The first one I think we need to talk about is the LMIAs. Tell us what happened to that LMIA system.
So the LMIA system, which has been in place for decades, were really limited and attacked by the minister. And the minister basically said that canceled most of the what's called low-wage LMIAs. And what the government now defines as low wage is, for example, in Ontario, it's anyone getting a salary of under $34.07. In Alberta, it's even more, $35.40.
But employers are screaming about this. Butchers, for example, if you need to get a butcher.
Cooks,
and
construction,
if you're outside of the city, those wages are obscene to have to pay, and they're sinking businesses, and the government's doing nothing about it.
Yeah, they're saying these workers who have been working for years for employers employers and our valued workers now have to leave Canada. That is just completely short-sighted and just not smart for industry.
The other one that was a really big announcement that I found came out of the blue because there were no indications that it was happening with the intercompany transferees. Intercompany transferees are a program where individuals that worked overseas for a company was able to transfer with the same company into Canada. Elizabeth, can you tell me kind of what happened there?
So basically, the government reinterpreted policy that had been in place for a decade, which allowed someone who had been working for a company overseas to come and work in Canada in a related company in Canada. And what they really attacked was entrepreneurism. So basically, the intercompany transfer before allowed people who had been working in a company overseas to create a subsidiary or related company in Canada and then transferring themselves here. Now, what the government has said that if you haven't been working for a company overseas that has at least 2 revenue generating companies in 2 different countries, that you're no longer able to apply for work permit under the ICT program, which is a complete deviation from what had been policy for many years. So they're attacking workers and they're attacking entrepreneurs and they're attacking companies as well.
The timing of this also was very strange to me, especially at a time where there's tariff threats and we're talking about increasing ties with America. There's so many intercompany transferees between Canada and America, and it's so important for those companies to be able to move workers back and forth. To put an attack on that at this time, I thought was really strange.
Yes, and there were some things that they weren't able to change unilaterally, which was free trade agreements. But even free trade agreements, they said now that they made a mistake when they put in that the free trade professionals had to meet the median wage. Now, this year, they're saying, oh, that's a mistake. We didn't actually say that, even though they clearly had stated that last year.
And then we were getting to the end of the year and the big bombshell dropped. And these were arranged employment points. So people who wanted to get points towards their permanent residency. Can you kind of explain what happened there? Because I think it was on the 30th that they dropped this?
It was actually Christmas Eve. And I have to say, that's a very Grinch behavior. I have to say, that's the most Grinch behavior I've ever seen of a minister. On Christmas Eve, the IRCC had put out the statement that arranged employment points for those people who had employer-specific work permits and had job offers to work in Canada in high-skilled jobs were no longer going to get additional points for permanent residence for express entry, and this was going to take place sometime in spring. This means that the majority of people who are in Canada who have been deemed to be of significant economic benefit to Canada will no longer have that ability. Many people will no longer have that ability to get permanent residence, including very, very high-skilled technical workers, CEOs, senior management. No one is going to have that ability. And, with that decrease in the quota for people who are able to get permanent residence, the government is really saying, we want all of you guys who have worked in Canada for years. They don't even care if you've been identified as being of significant economic benefit to Canada. They don't care if you're doing a job that other Canadians can't do or won't do. They want you out. It's very discouraging, but you know what? There is some light at the end of the tunnel, which is that an election is coming. Conservatives have traditionally not been favorable of immigration, so there will be changes happening, but surely some common sense might come into play when there is a government change. In the meantime, guys, if you qualify for any of the existing programs, have your application submitted. We're here to help you with the planning. We're here to help you with the execution. Please note that if you are lucky enough to get an invitation to apply, you may not get a second chance if your application is denied because you missed a certain document or you missed a signature here or there. okay? Make sure that you have proper representation, and we're certainly here to help you.
Hopefully we'll have some new programs. I'm hoping common sense will prevail. I know the colleges are going to start yelling back. The universities are going to start yelling back. Business is going to start yelling back. And that's usually when we see a shift in change.
And I think all of you and all of us should start yelling back as well. Okay? So here's to yelling back in this new year. And hang in there, guys. We'll be there for you. Take care.